So
No.
everyone, we don't have any viewers right now, so we'll just wait for everybody to start coming in here. Hazel, I'm just going to put you on the screen right now while I start looking up what's going on here with everybody registering and logging in.
Okay, so should I start speaking?
Yeah, because we're going to be doing now the chat on Easter. Today is Easter. I'd like to say happy Easter to everybody here, or the ones that will be tuning in later on. Today was the resurrection of Christ, as indicated on our calendar system. And today, Hazel wanted to cover with me atonement, sin, and burying our dead. So, as we don't have anyone here, where would you like to jump off from this point there, Hazel?
Okay, well, I'd just like to say yes, happy Easter to everyone. And, I think for me, actually, I reframed my Easter time a long, long time ago. There was a time when I walked on this planet as Hazel that I got into the religious aspect of all of the holidays, Easter and Christmas especially, and I loved them. But as I went through all of that, going to church and so on, I evolved out of that into spirituality. And so now I can look back and I read the Bible and the quotes and understand my beloved friend Jesus, because that's what he is. He still lives and he still communicates with me and talks to me like a good friend, like I would talk to Jeffrey. And he inspires me and uplifts me because obviously while he walked the planet, he lived from his divine self, his human self with a capital H and a capital U, which the sound U means God. And he truly was and is the Son of God, as we all are, because God created form. And in that field of form is all of us. So we are all the firstborn of God. And Jesus understood that, as many of us on the planet now are beginning to understand that. So when we read that Jesus died for our sins, he saved us from our sins, I ask myself over and over again, how can that be? Because I have to take full responsibility for my individualized portion of consciousness that I am, that throws through my body. Now, sin means an immoral act, and it means to transgress against divine law. And I can go along with to transgress against divine law in that the only transgression, if you can call it that any of us walking the planet today and who ever have walked the planet, the only sin is that we made ourselves separate from God, from our divinity. And if that is to transgress against divine law, I can loosely go along with that. So to me, Jesus did not save anyone from our sins, their sins, but he showed us the way. Jesus came to the earth to teach the way, and the way is love. And did he not say, love your enemy? But I say to you, love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. And he said that because he knew if we gave our power to any other deity, we would lose sense of who we are, because that would disempower us. And that's very important to understand, not just at this time, but for all time. Those religions that worship deities that are not the spirit that created us all, and I say it now, with whatever comeback comes at me, we really need to look within ourselves at that, why we do not go directly to the creator of all of us. So then Jesus dying for our sins doesn't quite work with me, because my only sin is that, yes, I did live separately from my divine self. I lived completely, totally as my human self. So, oh, hello, Alison. There you are. And separate from the earth too. Yes, Alison, that is correct. People really do not understand at a visceral level that our bodies are the earth. And once you really get that and you feel that, you come into alignment that the earth is the mother aspect, the receiver, the nurturer. And coming to alignment with that, and it solves a lot of confusion and doubt. And it's just beautiful to know that we're a part of the earth, and that the earth, through osmosis, helps us to transform and alchemize our lower emotions, which are really steeped and stuck in the body.
Now, do you think the steeping aspect of our emotions, is that something that's been transposed over generations during the time of the Darkened Ages? Or is it like, how do we carry it over from our past life onto the next one? Or we're even like training our children in a way with the environment that we're living in? For instance, if I see one family that's completely raised in a loving house compared to one that's in a fear-based house, there's two different aspects. But it seems like the world right now is transitioning from that one type of household into a loving one. Where did that all come about? How did we last for so long in this sort of like sinful, immoral, hateful viewpoint of ourselves? Like our inward thinking was in a very negative way. I always like asking that question because I like your response to it, Hazel.
Well, it's like you posted the other day, Jeffrey, that even those that feel the most defiled amongst us still have the spark of God within them. And at the end of the day, at the 11th hour, that keeps us going. Even if we have committed suicide, that spark of God is still in us. So we never, ever, ever can annihilate that. So, you know, that brings great comfort to me. And I know in my darkest moments that kept me going, just that pinpoint of light that is in every cell in our bodies. But we have to align with that light and surrender to it by living by the divine laws of the light. But going back to the emotions imprint themselves in and on the flesh. That's why people get sick. That's why they have heart attacks. That's why people who the sweetness have gone out of their lives get diabetes, because it affects the pancreas. That's why people that are angry and full of rage end up with liver damage and all of that. So it's the emotions that really vibrate to anger and so on that imprint on our bodies, literally that disease. And that is from the fall from grace, the beginning of sin, if you like, or let's change it to modern day language, the beginning of separation from our spirit, where we went from the heart and allowed the mind to rule. That's another way of saying what the Bible was saying and interpreting that in the 21st century of what we understand now, and how we are re-empowering ourselves and calling back our own power by going within, by going straight to the main man, which is God. And God is male energy, whether we like it or not. God is the creative force, and he is male energy. It's positive and it's creative. So, and the earth is feminine energy. We all know that, and it receives the power of God. So, you know, nothing to do with gender. Let's leave that to the side as well. So yes, that's when it started, Jeffrey, when we decided that we could create without being aligned with God. And that's when everything started going pear-shaped. Let's not say wrong, because it was an experiment and we've learned so much. No matter how horrendous it's been, we have learned to temper our souls, the tsunamis that rage through our souls, the molten lava that runs through our souls, the poisoned blood that runs through our bodies, that represents and is directly linked to the rivers of the earth. So we're polluted because we have forgotten how to live from peace, joy, love, and courage. And so we live from all those lower traits that pollutes us, and we sit and we stop thriving. And that's directly linked, because our bodies are made from the stuff of the earth. It's directly linked to the rivers of the earth. And we all know how polluted they are. And it's a direct reflection back to us of how polluted our blood is.
Yeah, you were mentioning to me prior to the broadcast about the blood and how transfusions, when they're given to another human being, you more or less are feeling another person's emotions, right?
That's right, yeah.
But before answering that, I have a question now with respect to that. What happens when that person who gave you a transfusion has passed on? So the first question is, can you elaborate again just on that subject, blood transfusion and the feelings that are transposed from one human to the one that now has their blood in their body? And if that person that donated the blood, what happens when they pass on? Is there any more transmission of emotion from the spirit side of the world, the universe?
It is possible, because the DNA of that person is still linked to the one who's carrying the blood and walking around with it in their physical bodies. But DNA is the interface between the spirit world, meaning spirit with a little s, you know, when we pass over. It's the interface. So subatomic particles come and merge with the DNA, which then bursts into physicality. So logic tells me, my intelligence tells me that yes, it is possible that the person that has passed over is going to have a link back to their physical blood. And the reason that I back that up is because some people, when they die, they are so attached to their physical bodies that they don't want to leave the earth plane. So it's a lower level of consciousness and so on. But absolutely, yes, it is possible.
Now,
of course it's possible.
Yeah, I kind of had a feeling about that. Once you started getting the train rolling on that thought process, I definitely gravitated to a connection with it. Now, Marie has asked a question indicating, can you tell us a bit about the divine laws?
Yeah, well, hello, Marie, as they apply to our divine selves and living them on the earth, I'm presuming you mean that. Well, there are only two laws that Jesus gave to us, and the first was love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul and mind, across the board, full stop. No, that's as plain as day. And then to love your neighbour as yourself is the second divine law. That's it. That's all that we need. But to surrender to our divinity means to live and be peace, love, courage, and joy. That is what it is to be your divine self. To live from those vibrations is our divine self. They are not human traits. So the divine laws are but two. But to be your divinity is to live, as I'm just repeating, because it is so, so important, to be peace, to be love, to be
Peace,
joy, which is the highest vibration.
Peace, love, joy, and courage.
Yes.
Peace, love,
yes.
joy, and courage.
Yes, they are the four cornerstones, if you like, of living from our divine self. They are the divine laws. Because if we live from peace, it's beautiful. Let us just now not think peace, but be it. Be peace. And then be love, which is a different frequency. Be love and be joy is to have that love expressed, because a lot of people keep their love inside themselves. You know, I know as a little girl, when I was really, really happy and joyful, my dad would always tell me to sit down and be quiet. So I had to keep that inside of me. So, and there's no point to love if it's not expressed. It's got to be expressed through our own bodies first, because it helps us and keeps us thriving, and then to share that with everybody else. So is that clear? So there are two divine laws to live by. Love the Lord thy God with everything you've got, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? And then to be your divine self is to be peace, not mindfulness, but peace, be love, be joy, and be courage. And you will find that as you repeat those vibrations within yourself, that you can go from one to the other, and you will notice that they all have peace in them. Like if you go from peace to love, you can sense the peace within the love, but there's that something more with love. And when you go from peace, love to courage, you find courage has got a lot of love there, but there's something more in the courage. And then, of course, when you go to joy, that's another feeling again altogether. Well, it flows through us as a feeling. That's how we recognize it, but they are states of being. So when we are being love, if you didn't know anything else, if you had no contrast from what we've all come from, you know, the human self, we wouldn't know we were being love. We would just say, I just feel wonderful all the time. I don't know what you're talking about, all this, you know, anger and all of that. But we came for the contrast. And we came for the power in the absolute right context that gives to us as God beings. The strength it gives to us to use in this time that we're in with our compassion to help others cross that bridge, which is what we're all here to do right now in this decade.
Now,
so I hope that's helped.
Oh, we have something with Allison that just popped up here, but I just wanted to bring something forth. So I'm going to pop up for 1 second, and I'm just going to read, you know, the kind of Webster's definition of courage, because there was something that Hazel had brought up, a different definition to courage that made more sense to me once I started embodying peace, love, and joy. When it came to courage, the definition that we have here is to face strength in the face of pain or grief. So if courage is simply just being able to overcome pain or grief, it sounds almost like putting a bandage on something and saying, oh, okay, thank you very much, have a nice day, when courage is a lot more grand in nature than that. And the other wording it has is the ability to do something that frightens one. So I'm not sure why that seems to be on the slippery slope of definitions on dictionary.com, but that's what we have here. So peace, if you think of every alternating, contradictory word to each one of these, it's a very easy connection for us because we live in a fear-based reality. So if you think of peace, you immediately have war. If you have love, you immediately have hate. When you have joy, well, it's unfortunate.
Misery.
And then courage. Well, obviously, you have fear, which is probably quite the polarizing opposite to love is fear, and that's the one that we all resonate towards when dealing with spirituality. So based on just the opposing side to these four powerful, positive, enlightening words, just the words themselves, what's your response to, you know, just the opposing side of the fence, Hazel, and where we kind of came from and where we are today, or where we are going to be in the future?
What do you mean, the opposing side of the fence, as in peace and war, love and hate?
When I look at the headlines in a newspaper, I'm seeing nothing really that has to do with peace. I'm seeing everything that has to do with war. And when anyone is talking about peace talks, there's all these terms and conditions to it, which is based on a fear-based mentality. So we have all of these restrictions to achieving these four designated terms: peace, love, courage, and war, based in this fear world. So how do we counteract the negative aspects, like the war, the hate, the opposing parts of joy and courage that seem to still be on the forefront of our society today?
Well, the way that we counteract all of that is to just be. them. So, you know, as individuals, enlightened, awakening individuals, and we're awakening. To awaken means God awakens in man, and that is why we are the highest creation of man, of God, because God awakens in us. We become conscious that that beautiful, beautiful divine energy flows through us, and when we've emptied out our human self, then we know that we are so close to God, we're essentially cloned like the man Jesus was and is. But all of these things that you're saying, the rules and the regulations, and out there we just see war and hate and misery. That is the human dilemma. Everything is coming up. The sewerage of human nature is in front of our very eyes as war, pollution, starvation, misery. That is all of us in the collective consciousness. And, you know, the folk that are actually experiencing that and mirroring that back to us, that is all of us. That is the mirror of our emotions and our thoughts. Now, luckily, well, luck has nothing to do with it, but just a turn of phrase. Luckily,
it's just a phrase.
there are many, many, many of us now doing the inner work, because you can only do it on an individual basis. One human at a time. That's how God works. And then he flows through all of us. And then there's more of us. First of all, there was one. Now there's two. Then there's four. Then there's a village. Then there's a country. And then it will flow out. But it takes time. But you know, when this quickens, when the quickening comes, the balance, the tipping point, everything is going to come forward so quickly that, you know, we're going to look back and whoa. And my grandchildren are going to say to me, oh, Glammy, because I'm going to be called Glammy, not Nanny. they're going to say to me, oh, it must have been dreadful. How could you have lived through such times? And that is coming, and I will be alive to hear those words and feel all of that. I just know it in my blood. I know it. So what do? We've got duality, peace and war, love and hate, joy and misery, courage and fear. That is duality consciousness, which is 3D consciousness. That is the contrast. But if you're into Abraham Hicks, that's what they talk about. We come for the contrast, and we do come for the contrast. And then when we understand the contrast, we step back into the light like the prodigal son. We are the story of the prodigal son returning home to the light. So we then drop the duality and we make conscious choices as divinely awakened humans to live in unity, not to have opposing forces, but to have just peace, love, joy, and courage. That's how I live inside myself. It took me a long time to get there, but that's how I worked my life. I made changes in my life, physical changes, because that was where I was headed. And I'm just looking at Marie's question now. It's,
I just responded to it.
All right.
Because it was actually Allison's here, the experiment of not living according to her divine law pollutes our minds and bodies, and this shortens our lives considerably. I believe she was referring to when you're talking about the divine laws. First, if we could go over that, and then Marie was interjecting with stating that the media really has no interest in promoting anything but fear in the paper, in the news, and the TV. And this, can I pop on the screen, because this is a part of me that's I'm very passionate about, just to let everyone know, during any transitional period when I was working with people that really live with mental health conditions, one of the first things I suggested to them, and it is a suggestion always, to stop watching the news and reading the newspapers, because this is just magnifying any type of anxiety or depression that you may be experiencing. And when you're trying to escape something like that, it's really hard when you only see such doom and gloom surrounding you, when there's a lot more beauty out there. Sometimes during those periods of our lives, we have to go out searching for it, which is some things that I would point out go on nature walks and this sort of thing. But there is no question in time. There's no question that the media is not there to offer us anything but fear and doom and gloom. And when there is a few messages broadcast that have hope and inspiration, they always kind of loop it into something afterwards that is completely counterproductive to what they were just talking about. So it's no surprise. Shut your TV, radio off, and TV. There are access points for all of us to get this information online and so forth. But when you get to the point of surpassing such a connection to the media and news outlets and that sort of thing, I challenge people to turn on the news and watch and see what's going on, see how things are being broadcast, see if you can catch how manipulative it can be, and realize that you're not part of that matrix or system that's in place anymore. You're kind of standing outside now watching the game kind of forming and realizing that you're actually enjoying a different type of game, the game of love, the love of peace, courage, joy, all these aspects of things, because those are the aspects of life that we need to focus our attention on. And the more that we walk away from the media-based manipulation and just live in love and joy and happiness, and you can walk around in public and, as I said in the last time, open doors for people and do all these sorts of little gestures, because there is always going to be a trickle effect down from that person to another. And it all starts with as simple as clicking the off switch to the type of outlets that are giving you not necessarily misinformation entirely, but just not the right message you want to be embracing every moment of your day. Like we have in Canada, we have a station called CP24. It's in the US, it's called CNN. They're just constantly bombarding you with information, context, headlines, just breaking in, all this kind of stuff. I'm going to stop rambling now. I'm going to pass it over to Hazel. And I just like hearing her response to this sort of thing, because she gives a little bit more of a grounded approach to that sort of thing. And I really speak from the heart of passion, because I know how much brainwashing goes on in those things, because that's the whole purpose of it anyways.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I just to acknowledge Alison. Yeah. The experiment of not living according to divine law does pollute the mind and body, Alison. Not only our own minds and bodies, but the earth herself. So we spoke about that, and I know you quite well now, and I know you're right there with it. And to Maria, what she said, they don't listen to the fear-based news and so on. Now, my take on that is somewhat different. I agree that when you are first removing yourself from the matrix, which is what I call the world out there, the media and the control and all of that, going to work, da-di-da-di-da. That's what I'm calling the matrix for the purpose of this conversation. Now, when you are first withdrawing from that, yes, I agree. Don't watch the news. Stay in your own beautiful environment, because everyone who journeys back to the light will find that they need to be in solitude to strengthen themselves, to really align and be totally immersed in their own spirit, and that energy can flow through without any pull from the outside world. And by pull, I mean that flowing from the one who is trying to separate from the matrix. They're not into self-pity, they're not into fixing people, they're not into saving anyone. That's what I mean by that. So the empath in us, by withdrawing, begins to alchemize into compassion. Now, once we become full of courage, full of love, full of joy, we are ready to go into that world, but not be of it, because we are here to help those people. And although the news is fear-based, a lot of what is reported is true. And we cannot forsake those refugees, millions of them, that are homeless, literally living in mud. We cannot turn our backs on them. And this is the whole meaning of Easter. Those people out there are going through their own crucifixion. And if we do not have sufficient light in the form of compassion and deep love and courage for humans who are a part of us, and we're just staying in that isolated solitude, beyond how long we should be, then there is something very, very wrong with the person that is doing that. That is someone who has created a bubble around themselves and are deluded. I want to make that very clear, but we do need that time, and that time is dictated by the person transitioning from fear to love, transitioning from earth to heaven and vice versa, and really becoming aligned and solidified in the divine energy. We cannot not serve these people. We are here when we are completely aligned. We are here to comfort God's people because we cannot leave them behind. Now, it's appropriate now that I talk about atonement. Yes. Atonement. You know, we have the visual, the symbol of the cross, which is, you know, let's just say we've got two pieces of wood. One comes from heaven to earth straight down, and the other is the cross across it vertically, arms wide open. So we have the rod of God coming right through us as divine energy. It is a level of consciousness. And it is like liquid gold, and it fills us with peace, love, courage, and joy. These are the qualities of God. And when we are fully immersed in that, when that energy is fully immersed in us, we can open our arms to the world, to everyone from that space. Now, atonement is the action of making amends for wrong or for an injury. Atonement also means at one-ment, to be at one. Now, we all know that we have a human self, and if you understand the chakra system, you understand that the top half of the body is more related to the divine self, and from the solar plexus down, it's related to the personality and to the human self. And in my work with people, mostly the work is done with the human self, because that is where the thoughts and the emotions of the mind settle in us, and they cause such a dense energy. It's with some people, it's like walking through, trying to break through a nuclear power station, you know, steel. Some people's minds are like steel, and that has to be broken down. Some people's emotions are thick, like the thickest sewerage you could ever imagine. Now, atonement, when people like myself and Jeffrey and you, Maria, and Alison, and all of us who have atoned, become at one with everything we've done and said, we've accepted that's who I am, we've embraced our human self. So now that rod of God can flow right down into the deepest parts of us, into the deepest shame that I've ever had. I know that rod cleansed my shame. I know that. But others find it very, very difficult. Now, when we have atoned, we are a clear vessel for that beautiful, beautiful consciousness. And we are strong, really, really strong. And nothing is going to knock us off balance. No evil in the world. Because if God is with us to the depths of us, who is against us? That's what it means. So to atone is to really reach the depths of our own human suffering, and then go beyond that and reach the depths of the suffering of humanity as a whole. Now, I have felt that suffering of humanity as a whole, and I've felt it from the animals, and I've gone through the atonement at that level as well. So I know I am a good, strong vessel, and there's no way I cannot not be totally aware of what's going on in our world. Because to not be aware means I'm deluded, and I'm not deluded. I'm truly not deluded. And I put a post on my Facebook page just now. Surrender resurrection and union. It is time. You are ready. And what I'm talking about now is what I meant, because we are needed here on the ground, running, ready to help people face themselves through these, what we would call tragedies. So, does that make sense, Jeffrey? Have I kind of given that a good?
You know what? Alison has brought forth a question. How to talk about how one's atonement affects others in our lives. So when we're making that atonement, anyways, go on. You can respond.
Yeah. So Alison, what that actually means is when we've atoned ourselves for, embraced our own shame and all of that and accepted everything we've done, and we still love ourselves from that compassionate place, then the dynamics in any family situation changes. It has to change. It cannot not change, because one person has changed and aligned with the Godhead. So God then can work through the one who has come into alignment, the one who's atoned, the one who is at one. Now, you will find that your family, obviously I'm thinking you're meaning here, mum and dad and your siblings, they will either change and God through you will pull them up and they will come to you for help, or the chasm between the two of you will get so big that you'll have nothing more to do with each other for perhaps many, many years.
Hazel, I'm just going to jump on the screen in case you want to have a drink of water or anything.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So normally, I'll share a story that we can all relate to, especially on the subject that Hazel was just talking about. When you start going through a process of awakening, realizing there's a deeper meaning to our existence, you will typically run into family members or those closest to you that you're turning to for support. So you'll go to them, you say, oh, have you ever noticed this, or have you thought of that? And they normally will give you a contradicting response in this sort of way, which actually can frustrate you or even make you angry. And then some of us even start doubting things that we're starting to learn. For me, several years back, when I started going from being a non-believer, even God existed, into starting to say, hey, God existed, and the little bits and pieces of information that I would learn, I would pass on, and then, I would be challenged, well, science this and science that is not proven, and so on. So the doubt starts creeping into you, even while you're going through a transitioning into a spiritual sense. And then when things get fast forwarded to what Hazel was talking about, it's very true in our own lives, because we feel really strongly about what we believe in, because it's not even a belief anymore, it's an embodiment. We realize why we're here, why we're living. So when we are connected to other individuals, even our own birth family, that don't share the same beliefs with us, sometimes you do have to sever the cord, in a sense of, well, do you want to have these contradicting conversations with them over and over and over again? Or do you want to have like a civil sort of separation in saying, you believe what you believe and I believe what I believe? Because when you live in love, you've learned that you don't need to force your beliefs upon anybody else, because they're not going to absorb them one way or the other, just like you're not going to buy into their beliefs anymore. That maybe science is the way, or getting a pension and benefits is going to give you all the happiness you want after you retire. So these are just the similar conflicts that we go through during a spiritual process that I've run into, other people that I've spoke to have run into. And Hazel, are you good to go now, based on
yes,
what I just kind of was bringing to the forefront? Again, for me, it's always about you don't want to struggle, you want to love, you want to learn, and you want to live. You don't want to be in a constant cycle of battling or proving what's right and what's wrong, or dealing with somebody else on that forefront. So if you can maybe expand upon, what bridge do we cross, and when do we stop looking backwards, and maybe some suggestions on how we stop looking backwards, in a sense of going back to family or friends, or What do we do in that aspect? What's your suggestion?
Yeah, as you know, it's a process, Jeffrey, talking about the family environment now. Now, if any of us that are into arguing and debating, we're still in the 3D world. You're still tied to the matrix if you're into arguing and debating. So that's a clue where you're at in your own transition. And you're going to keep doing that and keep doing that. And it's not only... let's be clear that you want to convince other people that you are right. It can be, you know, is a lot of that attachment. So a lot of people that argue and are into debate are attached to the need to be right. So that goes on for a little while. And you, at the same time, parallel to that, you are studying the light, you're being the light, you're meditating, you're taking walks in nature, you're taking time to be solitary and all of that. So all of that's, you know, working on you as well. And it'll come to the stage where you just cannot live in that lower level of consciousness anymore. And because of your understanding that has grown, that you are here to serve your soul before you're here to serve your family, then you're going to one day just up and change it all. And that's how it happened to me. My soul was dying and I just knew I could not live the way I was living anymore. And literally something died in my physical heart. I felt it die. And that was how far I pushed myself to get out of the matrix. And the next day I flew home, left everything behind, and I flew home, slept on my mum's couch. And it pushes us to that. But there is such joy and freedom and liberation in that, because in one fell swoop, I cut all the materialism out of my life and the attachment to emotion and lower thinking. It all finished in one big crescendo. And so it's a process. It's a process, and you feel it in your heart that you just cannot live that way with those levels of consciousness showing up as people in your life. And you then choose. Every moment we choose how we are going to live our lives, how we're going to show up in the world, but importantly, who do we serve? And once you get to that place, you are well on the way, right over that bridge into the fifth dimension, which, as we know, is a state of consciousness. It's not a place. It's where you live from within yourself. And then, of course, you don't magnetize to you all of those levels of consciousness showing up as people, victims and bullies, and which is, you know, what we play out in the family paradigm. You don't attract those people to you. I can honestly say I don't attract any trash to me on my Facebook page, and I'm on there daily, as most of you know, and I don't attract those people that are needy as my clients anymore, because it's all been flushed out from me. So they've got nothing to hook into, so I can't offer them anything. And because at a deeper level, we all know everything anyway, even the ones that are supposed to be totally asleep, still get an inkling, they're very crafty. So it's a process. So if you're into arguing or debating, then you're still linked to the 3D world.
So my expanded question on that, Hazel, is then, well, you know, if we're really close to our family then, and we want to still maintain a relationship with them, or we somehow feel guilty, when is it okay to just, you know, like, how do we know better? When will we know better? I'm trying to even find
it's a feeling.
Question. You know,
it's
like,
a feeling. It's a feeling, Jeffrey.
It's like if I'm a boxer and I know it's time to retire, but I keep boxing, well, then I'm just putting myself in harm's way. So if I have different beliefs and I've moved on and say I'm in a fifth dimensional state of mind and I'm living it, I see it, I feel it, you know, it's there. Do I keep going back to my family just
No,
because they're my family, because they're never
no,
going to share the same viewpoint. Does it
no.
benefit anyone? Like, this is what I'm trying to get to, is there's people out there that are having these debates with themselves, because I've gone through it myself, and I'm sure a lot of others have too. What do we do at that point?
The people that are still having these debates with themselves are still on the bridge. They haven't transitioned fully. There is nobody who's going to be living from the fifth dimension that is attached to family members that are still operating from the old system. So if that is happening to you, you are in transition, and there's still a little processing to go through. But I would say, I can only say to you, trust the process you're going through. Because your family members, on a soul level, you all love each other deeply. You're just playing out karma at the level of the three-dimensional world. So that really comforted me. And I told the story of my mother in our last broadcast. And my mother and I have come full circle. There was a time when I hated my mother as we both walked the planet. And I wanted to push her away from me. So my mother and I sorted out karma. And even when she died, it wasn't fully complete. But as I related last week when we were talking about death, that my mother and I have come full circle. So when we meet again in a very physical way, but on a higher frequency, you know, it's going to be such joy. And it is joy when she comes to me now. When I leave the planet or leave this level of consciousness, which is what it is, planets are level of consciousness, then all will be well. So I would say take heart in that. You know, find books on soul contracts before we're born. You'll get a lot of information from, I read one myself. If I can remember it, I'll put the title up later. I don't know if we can do that on here or on Facebook.
Well,
There's
we
all
can
about
put it
soul
on the
contracts.
chat, but the fact of a soul contract is something that we kind of make with ourselves. If I can make a rendition of it, a contract we make with ourselves prior to inhabiting our three-dimensional body.
Yeah, we make it with the family we're coming to as well. Yeah. It's all of it is soul contracts, even the ones that are murdered by a murderer is a soul contract. Nothing is by chance. Nothing is by chance.
Expanding on that thought, I coined the term, which is a funny term, but I coined the term and condition generation, which would have been really put together within the last 100 years of existence. So I'm just going to pop up on the screen and give a little timeline. So between 1900 and 1920, we went through a huge transitional period of time in society. We had a lot of the inventions that we use today, like the X-ray machine, flight, automobiles, taxi cabs. There's a huge transitional point then. After that period of time, we started hitting a darker period. We went through the First World War, Second World War, the Great Depression. Then civil unions started to emerge between people of a colored descent and Caucasians within the United States. More in the United States than anywhere else in the world. The civil rights movement was huge. Martin Luther King really pushed forth the right to equality. That came through, and then we went into, leading up to that, we went into the women's rights, women's right to work, women's power movement, everything, and then into free love into the 70s. And then in the 80s, this is where I really start forming the connection with the terms and conditions generation, because that's when everyone was working and we started making money. Here in North America, my mother was a single mom by the time I was 3 years old. So that would have been 1982, 1983. When we moved into the first house she could afford, it was $79,000. 5 years later, that house was sold for over $200,000. So if you can understand, not only the price of the house drastically jumped like that, but also her salary. But we were also making terms with other things, and the terms we were signing off were, what are we getting for all this? What am I getting to exchange a 200% profit on my house? How much time was I spending with my mom now? She was working more hours. I was getting babysat more by my grandparents. So in a family forefront, we see this type of movement happening. Interest rates were insanely high still, so we're turning over more money, and we're paying down less of the principal of anything, be it a car loan or a mortgage. So the conditions keep layering and layering, and then the children growing up on this, we're getting things that our parents never did. I'm getting a bike every few years as I'm growing. I'm getting almost brand new clothes all the time. When the first 7 years of my life, I'm getting hand-me-downs from my brother. Everyone seems to be growing as the world is. But then we got into the mid to late 90s, and then we started going through what we were going through back during the Great Depression. We had wars going off. The Cold War kind of festered throughout the 80s, but it never really put a big dampening on the financial growth of corporations and stuff. But then in the mid to late 90s, we started seeing job loss. There are corporations that were having tons of cutbacks. So a company like IBM used to have country clubs and festivals for the employees. All that got eradicated. So now my mom's coming home stressed. There's less money, but all the bills are still as high. Jobs are being cut. Headlines in the paper, 20,000 people laid off. Then we have the Twin Towers fall. And now, almost just under 20 years later, we have the next transition that we had first in the first 20 years of the 1900s. So literally 100 years later, we're going through a big transitional switch. But it's not just in inventions of the physical sense. Now we're having like an invention of our spiritual sense. And this is where I'm seeing a difference between a term and condition that was even based on how we love one another is now expressed in a different way. When I say, Hazel, I love you, you feel different. I've never met her before in my life, but I know what it means to love someone or something. So there's a different connection with embodiment than we even had in the 80s, which was just in the monetary sense, just in the security sense. So Hazel, when we look at what's next, what's happening in the next 10 to 20 years, this is what I'm building up to is we had an awesome movement in the civil rights, then women's equality, and then we went through this beautiful financial explosion where everyone seemed to get anything they wanted. And then we had everything come crashing down. And it seems that we're building it up now, but correctly from the heart. So you were expressing something with me when we're like shedding our snake skin and we're growing into the new wave. So what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years? I just planted a seed of what's been going on in the last 100 years.
Well, what is going on? Technology has gone way, way, way ahead. Fantastic things are being invented and being brought to the earth by divine beings, scientists and so on, by divine humans. They are bringing these inventions and this new technology to the earth, but the human side of us all hasn't kept up because it can't keep up. So what is happening, there is a spiritual revolution going on. You mentioned the 1900s, the 1920s, and the 2 world wars that we had. And just after the Second World War, many light beings came to the earth. When I say light beings, I mean divine beings. I don't want to put them as light. I don't want to put them as rainbow children. I don't want to put them as indigos. We are from God. And I would love to see those labels go, because we are from God. We are from Source, and we have come en masse to help humanity with this spiritual revolution, so that spirituality and technology come side by side. We already know that scientists are proving so many things that mystics through the ages have been declaring. So we're no longer going to be drowned and burnt at the stake, are we? So everything, like you say, in human nature, in the 3D world, we swing. For example, we had no education. Then education came. Then our government here in England, we went on a de-education system where they didn't want people to be intelligent. They wanted people less intelligent to go to university, blah, blah, blah. So education got out of balance. Now everything has to come back into balance to what some people are calling 0 point. So spirituality was lost, now it's coming back. Technology is another piece of the pie, and that's catching up. So everything seems like a mess, but the bigger picture is it's all coming together in one big, beautiful, beautiful grid. We call it the crystalline grid. And the first waivers, they came, a lot of us were born en masse just after the Second World War, and I was one of them. And we came to, first of all, dissolve and filter those dark, dark energies from those wars. And now we, the first waivers, we are the emerging leaders coming forward, spiritual leaders. En masse, we are coming forward. And then we've got the second wave, which is people like yourself, humans like yourself, Jeffrey, that you are right there. You know, you're right on that bridge and you're just crossing over now, and you know the vision that I saw with you. And so en masse, the second waivers are coming. And then the third waivers are going to be kicking and screaming. And if they have to come kicking and screaming, which means they will lose everything, they will suffer. That's what I mean by kicking and screaming. But evolve they will, because there's going to be like the 100 monkey syndrome going on as well. As more and more of us collect in the new crystalline grid, we will strengthen, and we will just be like a solid crystal wall of consciousness against everything that cannot come through that force field. And if people want to join us, they must adjust their vibration to come through the force field. Right now, they will be able to see us through the force field. They will be able to chat with us because we will be able to go to them. But they can't come to where we live and have our abundance and our joy and harmony until they raise their vibration. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. And where we are headed, we've got about 10 years, maybe a bit less, Paul.
I want to be optimistic.
Where all of this is gonna solidify. Let's put it that way, as another way of saying it. But it's all going to come about. Provision has been made at every level. Even though, you know, earlier, Marie, we were talking about, you know, the media and all of that. God has got people everywhere. There are scientists, there are politicians. You've only got to look at Bernie Sanders. You've only got to look at Jeremy Corbyn here. They are ready. They are there. They are the first waivers. They are the first waivers. Bernie Sanders is the first waiver. He knew his time would come. Mm-hmm. Right? And that doesn't matter whether he's elected president or not, or at all. He has opened hearts. He has spread seeds like wildfire through this campaign. And we mustn't just think that people that talk like we do, you know, about chakras and all of that, that there are children of God everywhere, strong people, even in the armed forces. All right, let's not leave the soldiers out. Let's not leave those people out. They, just because they are soldiers, don't taint them with war. They do a lot of good, these people. I know.
Yeah. And they're sacrificing their lives. We cannot forget the fact that we may hate war, but the people that are actually dying for us, they're putting themselves out there for our safety.
Well, it's not only that, though, Jeffrey. The soldiers go and they do good. They protect, they help, and they serve. Yes. They serve the oppressed. And we don't get to hear that in the news. Of course we don't. But that's okay. Just because the masses don't hear, it's still going on. And it's more important that it's going on than we hear about it. If you see what I'm saying? Because those soldiers are being it. They are there in the face of it all with courage and compassion. You know, they're not sitting at home meditating. They're there on the front line doing it. That's the difference. And yet we get people who decry them and, you know, all of that stuff. You know, let's just have a little tweak in our belief system around that, you know. So there are good's not the right word. There are people serving God everywhere. And they're not necessarily in the church. We all know that.
Well, we're gonna just start wrapping things up now there, Hazel. Was there any last points that you wanted to bring about? It is Easter. Christ was resurrected from the dead, as it's been taught to us in the Bible, in the holiest of holy books. And I don't mean like 3-hole punch paper now, come on. We got to put some even corniness into this. So Hazel, any last words for everyone watching now and anyone that will be watching in the next few days?
Yes, my last few words are: atone for your own self, come to terms with everything you've ever done that has made you cringe or blush, or anything you've ever said or done that you wouldn't want anyone to know about. Come to terms with that, accept it, embrace it, and then the light that is God can resurrect the rest of you. And the next step is union. And that's what Easter, it's not even Easter. That's what life is about. That's where we're headed. I love you all.
I love you too. I'm just going to do my little thing. Thank you everyone again for sticking here with us and spending time with us on the holy day of Easter. And we'd like to again say thank you. And Hazel, do you want to just give one more thank you very much and have a nice day?
Yes, Alison, thank you, darling. And thank you for your email. Fantastic, Alison, what is showing up and what's happening in your life. And Marie, I see, a lot's changing for you and you're waiting for what comes next. So yeah, we only need to know what we need to know when we need to know it, Marie. So that is just being open and allowing and being aware, and you can be guided to the right geographical place, the right place in the supermarket, la-di-da-di-da. And Kimberly, thank you. Yeah, we're lighting candles in ourselves. We are the candle, and I take that into my heart. I see a light in my heart, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that light goes into prisons, it goes into hospitals, it goes to Calais for the refugees, it goes all around the world for the oppressed people, but it also goes to the perpetrators, because they too have been a part of the game. Much love, and God bless us all.
God bless. Bye-bye.